So welcome to the Evolution Exchange. So the Evolution Exchange is a melting pot of ideas for thought leaders in the industry and leaders within tech. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Martijn De Jong. And today we're discussing, I think, a topic really relevant at the moment given current market conditions, which is leadership or leading in a downturn. Martijn, delighted you could join us today, and if you wouldn't mind just brief introduction on yourself.
Absolutely, Jake. First of all, thanks for pronouncing my name correct. It's not that easy.
We didn't check before, so I'm glad I managed to get that.
No, that's absolutely correct. So I'm honored to be here and very glad to share some of the lessons I learned, the mistakes I made, and hopefully they're useful for the rest of the audience to learn from that. As a background for myself, I worked in multiple different continents. I had teams in around 60 countries. I worked in 4 different industries, from banking, telecom, insurtech, and digital assets. Currently, I'm mainly occupied by mentoring and investing in startups. And my most recent roles have been managing director and chief digital officers. Companies like Reliance Jio in India, Aegon, Standard Chartered Bank, well known in Singapore, and most recently OSL Digital Assets. And people ask me often, why did I end up in so many different industries? And that's a very fair question. So I think my first sort of shared tip or lessons learned is try different industries, especially in the beginning. A lot of industries actually are adjacent. For example, when I started in mobile telecom, it was expanding and it went a lot into mobile payments and fintechs. It was sort of a natural evolution for me to go into financial services. Also, when I started my career, one of the hottest industries to be in was mobile telecom. But over time, relatively traditional industries like financial services suddenly became hot. Fintech came out with a lot of innovation, and I thought it was a good time for me to join. Financial services is close to my heart. Financial services is an industry that is the heartbeat of any economy. It's also financial inclusion. So I think the second point that I picked up is the purpose and why do you do a job. And to be fair, if I look back at my career, I don't think I actually did it very consciously. I think subconsciously I sort of made certain decisions, but I think in the more experienced I became more conscious why I wanted to join an industry, what value can I add. So those are some of the tips and lessons learned I would like to share with the audience.
Yeah, fantastic. So, great introduction. I think we're really lucky to have someone with so much experience, and particularly, very, very relevant experience, I think, to help our community in terms of navigating the next 12 months, and not only the people within our community, but leaders themselves. So we jump straight into the first question. So, I guess, every day we hear about, layoffs. Every day we hear about, prevailing negative sentiment within the market. I think, it's something that obviously causes a lot of anxiety for a lot of people. But I think today we want to come at it from the perspective of leadership. And I think, leadership can often be a lonely place, and leaders often, not the first group of people to be empathised or sympathised with when there is such significant changes across the market. So I think while we hope this, this podcast will give some insights for our community, I think hopefully the ideas that we share could give some confidence or comfort to leaders within the tech industry, not only how to approach some of these challenges, but also that they're not the only ones going through the difficult decision-making process, which is probably going to be part of most leaders' life for the next 12 months. So, first question, how have the priorities of leaders shifted from the beginning of 2022? Obviously, high war for talent, everyone's talking about a great resignation. A lot of the priorities for leaders at that time was retention and hiring. And perhaps now, at the end of 2022, the prevailing sentiment within the market has almost shifted 180, or is in the process of shifting 180. So I guess, first question is, how have the priorities of leaders, how have your priorities as a leader shifted since the beginning of 2022 to now?
It's a great question, Jake. I think when you start at the beginning of the year, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of optimism, and you make goals, you make plans. But unfortunately, the market circumstances are very differently, as you said. And I think that's the first takeaway, that adaptability for leaders is key. And if we look at what Darwin said many years ago, he said it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, it's the one most adaptive to change. So again, that's a key lesson I learned. However, it's not an easy process. Now you can imagine you're in a room with people, you have a lot of energy, you build a plan, you hire a lot of people, and suddenly you have to change. And that's not easy, but that requires a mental shift. And it also requires the entire team to go with it. So one of the key principles as a leader, I believe, is yes, we should discuss it, we should debate it first fiercely. But when we decide to change, we should all be behind that change. There's no buts, there's no ifs. So we need to take time for that. It's also not easy because you said people are impacted. And we have all seen the news, especially tech companies, startups, and also in fintech. And how do you deal with that? And bringing those kind of messages is incredibly difficult. Not necessarily for me. I mean, it's difficult for me, but it's most difficult for the receiver.
Yeah.
And I think to do it directly and straightforward and transparent is the best way to do it. I also very much believe in aftercare. And what is aftercare? Aftercare is can be as simple as sending a WhatsApp, how you doing? Can be as simple as giving a phone call. Or, bring them in contact with people that you know are looking for people or headhunters. That's incredibly important. And I often speak with people afterwards, and that's what people sometimes need. And I think that's the best we can do. And on a more general trend, what we have noticed as well is that a lot of people that were in traditional firms, like banks, insurance companies, they got very tempted. There's a new exciting thing in town. There's startups and fintechs, startups and scale-ups, and still I believe in it. However, it did not always turn the right way for many.
Yeah.
And people start to realize and appreciate, again, the stability of the income, the stability of the work that the more traditional firms can offer. So again, if I can share a lesson learned is, yes, the grass sometimes looks greener, it's cool, I did it myself as well, but also realize what we have now, it's sometimes much better than realized.
Yeah. Makes absolute sense. So I guess talked about how to communicate with people who are potentially affected by prevailing market conditions, talked about how to approach that, talked about how to execute those changes or communicate those changes, which are often not the choice of the leader. It's often something which is forced upon the leader.
Right.
I think one of the less well understood facets of leadership is that some of the difficult decisions are between do we keep our staff or do we keep all of our staff versus do we keep some of our staff. It's if we were to let some people go, we managed to keep the majority. And I think perhaps that was the most recent sentiment communicated by Elon Musk when he took over Twitter and the company's running a big loss. He's talking about the necessity of coming to a point of break even. And maybe communication on that change was massively visible within the public domain. And I'm sure a lot of people would have an opinion on that. But I guess that brings us to the second question, which is how current incumbents within an organisation would be impacted. And maybe those not affected or not directly affected by layoffs and directly affected by market conditions in terms of their own position, but would be still struggling perhaps for motivation if colleagues, peers, those above them, managers, subordinates are being asked to leave an organisation and they're in the midst of an incredibly disruptive period. And maintaining motivation is obviously quite difficult with some of those circumstances surrounding them. So from the perspective of a leader, I guess, how would you motivate a team or a team of people who were perhaps not directly impacted, but obviously subject to the sentiment, subject to the surroundings of the prevailing market conditions?
It's incredibly difficult. I think the key thing is to provide a safe, valued, and respected environment. And I also tell you why, because it sounds very textbook. I'm a very firm believer that most of the ideas, suggestions, improvements actually come from the level of people that work daily with clients, systems, and processes. Now, as a leader, it's important to create an environment where people feel safe enough, feel valued enough to share those ideas. And I think as a leader, to create that is absolutely key. What is also key is then to listen to those ideas, and then not all ideas can be used, of course, but then feedback why it can be used, why not can be used, and if it can be used, sort of involve them in doing it. I think creating that belonging and part of a team, I think, is key. Many years ago, one of my mentors told me a story which I wanted to share, and it's about 3 stonecutters. So there's a guy walking in Brazil in the middle of the heat, and he sees 3 stonecutters, in a rock, and it's hot. And he goes to the first one, he's a bit grumpy. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "What do you think I'm doing?" "I'm cutting a rock. I'm cutting stone from a rock." "Okay." He goes to the second one, looks a bit more neutral. "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm helping to build a wall." And then the third one, he's whistling, he seems to be happy. He said, "What are you doing?" And the third stonecutter, the big brain, says, "I'm part of the team that's going to build the world's most beautiful cathedral." Now, the lesson learned here is very simple. If you show the big picture and if you let people belong and then be of that team, and be open and transparent. Can I guarantee the job of my team under any circumstance? I cannot, and I do not believe any leader can. But be open, what's the challenge, what's the opportunities, and we do it together. Take risk. I as a leader will take the responsibility, which I from my experience, helped a lot of people to evaluate or to reduce some of their fear and sort of keep that joy in the work and keep that creative flow going, which I think is key to be successful.
Yeah. And what about for people who are, I guess, feeling part of a company and perhaps the leader's doing a good job in creating that environment that you talked about. However, unavoidably, LinkedIn every day is layoffs. It's negative sentiment. It's not only LinkedIn, multiple different platforms, multiple different media outlets, and clickbait is unfortunately centered around bad news a lot of the time. When there is a lot of bad news, as there potentially has been over the past couple of weeks and might likely be over the forthcoming months, how would you approach, identifying ways in which leaders can ensure that levels of motivation maintain and sustain in spite of that opportunity to see the opposite type of sentiment?
I think it's communication and transparency and honesty. People are smart. We should never underestimate them. So we should be very open. So if let's say, hypothetical speaking, in certain departments have to go, certain people have to go, you need to explain it. And you should be able to explain it because you make life-changing decisions for people. So as a leader, I could have expected you to think about it. If I have to make those decisions, and unfortunately I have to. I can tell you many nights I won't sleep, but I keep thinking, do I do the right thing? Why do I do the right thing? And I think you pointed out, Jake, in the beginning, something important. You also have a responsibility for the larger common good. And of course, all of us want to keep everyone in the job, but if that means that the entire company goes down, actually it wasn't that very socially down.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think explain it, why do you go to a different direction? It doesn't mean people that stay, their job goes into that. Could be a downsizing because there's more focus. You go on one product instead of 5 different products. So I think that communication, I think if you can create that trust with your team, you build a certain credibility, and from what I learned, people trust your work. Now obviously you need to live up to it, you need to work to that, but I think that's absolutely key. And going back to the story I said about building this beautiful cathedral, it's also showing that bigger picture. And I think that's extremely exciting. I won't comment on Twitter, it's pretty controversial at the moment. But from what I read is that Elon Musk won't be very in the wheelchairs. Now, if he really would be able to do that, actually the company probably would be multiple times larger than it is today.
Yeah.
So sometimes you need to shrink a bit in order to go for the next level of growth.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's fascinating to see what might happen with that organisation. So obviously the track record of the new leader is fairly robust in terms of building companies. But perhaps walking in with the sink under your arm is an individual way of communicating the idea and the cathedral that you're trying to build. Cool, so I guess that brings us on to the third question. So in the last 12 months, so I guess it doesn't have to be within that time frame, but if you think about something from a leadership perspective that you've got right in the last 12 months and something that you've got wrong in the last 12 months, I think real world examples, the feedback that we get when people listen and head back on these types of podcasts or webinars is hearing real world experiences and real world examples is the most valuable part. So I guess that was the purpose behind this question. So I think if you think, again, it doesn't have to be within the last 12 months, but something that you've got right and something you've got wrong recently as a leader from a leadership perspective, what would that be like?
I will split it in multiple parts. I will start with investments. I got some investments right, some investments wrong in 2022. I won't go into that, but having worked in the crypto industry, I will give you a hint. I think the key is to learn from that. I think the absolutely most essential part, and I want to spend a little bit more time on that, is to get that balance right between work, family, friends, and health. And all of us, most of us are ambitious. And you get so stuck up in your work and so focused on your work, you forget that balance. From what I learned over my 20 years, yes, you can do that for a year, maybe 2 years, but ultimately it doesn't work out. You need to get that balance right, and I really want to emphasize family, friends, health, and work. Even if you're the most ambitious person in the world, get that balance right. You will not be successful doing that. And I also made a lot of mistakes in that, and sometimes you burn yourself and you learn from that.
Yeah.
I believe I have a better balance now. It was not easy, but I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
In terms of business decisions, as we had in the beginning of the call, we talked about making the plans and that sort of almost unlimited optimism. Scale-ups and startups are going to win the world, crypto is going to be big.
Yeah.
And as a decision of that, we hired quite a lot of people. We didn't foresee, many others with us as well, that the market would take such a sharp turn and that impact on people. I take personal responsibility for that. It's not easy. Again, the best is to learn from it. The best, as I stated earlier, is to give that personal aftercare to people.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes absolute sense. So if we look forward to 2023 and listening to the press or reading the press and again the sentiment in the current market, I guess, is one of concern for most people, particularly within big tech. You mentioned sometimes people look at the other side and look at fintechs and look at startups, and those fintechs and startups seem very exciting. However, there's an element of risk attached to that. And I think perhaps the last 3 months we've seen a lot of startups and fintechs letting people go. I think now when we hear about Twitter, we hear about Meta, we hear about potentially larger organisations with a fairly robust P&L, still albeit a share price drop or a reduction in user growth or a reduction in profitability, still an incredibly robust P&L. They're still looking at potential layoffs or at least hiring freezes in some instances. So I guess what that presents is challenges for the organisations, but challenges for leaders, but not only market sentiment, it can be more people-orientated foresight into 2023. So from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenge of a leader going into 2023?
I think you tipped on it, is to keep that team motivated. And I will quote which one of the CEOs of a larger financial service company shared with me, which I won't mention for obvious reasons. So he took charge in 2008, 2009, financial crisis, and obviously his company was also significantly hit.
Yeah.
And he was stressed, but he realized he should not show that stress in the office because everyone was watching his step. Logically. If the boss is stressed, the company probably goes down, and you got a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you go smiling in the company. You became serious, you became prepared, you became confident. And that confidence was spreading amongst his people. Oh, the boss seems to be confident. It's bad, but I think we probably do all right.
Yeah.
Which is a massive motivation for people.
Yeah.
And I think leaders often underestimate it, how much people look to them and sort of try to catch glimpse of what you feel and what you think. And again, transparency is important, but in difficult times it's also important to show a positive mindset.
Yeah.
And we have seen from different crises we had that actually fantastic companies were being built. And it is tremendously difficult for many people, but maybe many companies grew too fast, and maybe many companies were not led that well, and a sort of natural evolution was necessary, and actually better companies and stronger companies will come over time. So I think bringing that positive and realistic mindset, and as I pointed out as well, providing the communication to your team, take the ideas from them, I think is absolutely key for 2023. What 2023 will bring us in economic growth, it's difficult for me to say. I have my own ideas. European recession is mentioned. There's a lot of warnings about the US economy. I think the Southeast Asian economy still seem to be fairly strong. Indonesia performing exceptionally well, and Singapore getting a lot of foreign investment in, seems to be in a relatively good state.
Yeah.
So yes, there's still opportunities, but have that focus on profitability, on growth, but at the same time on your people, because ultimately creativity and innovation comes from people, and then you feel comfortable enough to work in that environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think really appreciate you bring each question back to the impact on people. And I think certainly what I've learned in leadership is that if you genuinely care about your people, it comes across as far more authentic and far more powerful than if that's something that you're self-focused on at the expense of profit or growth. A genuine care for the people who are under your care or within your business or part of your organisation, it's absolutely fundamental to being successful as a leader. And I think each question brought it back to that impact on people and how to create an environment which is productive and positive for individuals in the face of, potentially challenging external circumstances.
No, I appreciate it. The key challenge for a leader is also to stay humble and to learn and to unlearn. It took me quite a while to confess to myself I'm not perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. But it also means I need the ideas and the creativity of the team. And if I want to get that, I need to give them that environment to also show them, that I don't have all the answers. And I think for me, it has always been key in my career that I want my team to take risks. I ultimately take responsibility. I have some conditions around it. It's to be controlled risk, to have done their homework, obviously, and a few other things. But ultimately, as a leader, I take the responsibility if they want to try something new. I think test and learn is absolutely essential to build sort of the modern company. I remember I had a team in Germany, fairly conservative. And I said in front of 100 people, I said, if you do something and you have thought about it and it's a controlled environment and something goes wrong, I take the responsibility. And I also said, if you don't see me anymore in 6 months, you're probably doing too many experiments. These guys couldn't stop laughing. I said, what was going on? They couldn't stop laughing. And I was still there after 6 months, but it also was a liberation for them.
Yeah.
Because somebody was backing them up, and I think that is, there's so much creativity in people. And I think as a leader, and again, that took me quite a while to understand as well, it's not providing all the answers. You cannot, no one can. And if you can, I would highly recommend you to start your multi-billion-dollar startup.
Yeah.
Is to unlock the creativity from all the people around it, filter the ideas, bring them up, engage them, get them with you, let them think freely, and let them test and learn, constantly test and learn, and it's how you get better and better. Very exciting and very privileged to be in that position, obviously.
Absolutely, absolutely. Fantastic. Is there anything else that you want to share today, other than what we've discussed around those 4 questions?
Yeah, I want to give a bit of a summary of the things I said. So my recommendations is try different things in your career, especially in the beginning. Industries have a wide variety of jobs, and sometimes they're adjacent, as I pointed out. The things I did in telecom are very, very related to fintech. Build relationships, absolutely key, and you only build relationships when there's a certain level of openness, integrity, when you have a good communication. Adaptability, don't be afraid to change. It's difficult, it's sometimes painful, and a lot of energy has been put in plans, and so you have to change it. But get a team with you. Be a human leader, as you pointed out as well, Jake, and I appreciate that. Provide an environment where people dare to share their ideas. And really, it's important that people start sharing their ideas, because actually most of the ideas and most of the improvements come from the team, not from you. As a leader, you collect them, you evaluate them, you bring them together, and hopefully you can also enrich them and sell them to management and get them executed. But ultimately, most of the ideas need to come from the team. And I think the last one is related to that is listen and communicate. Be very clear, very transparent, and if hard decisions have to be made, tell them why you have made decisions. People are much, much smarter than people often reckon.
Yeah.
And if you're honest and open, and they can challenge you whenever you have a discussion, I think most of the people will understand why decisions have been taken, even if those are unpopular decisions.
Yeah. Completely understand, completely agree. I think there's some great insights there. Hopefully that's valuable to our community, and particularly the leaders within our community. So thanks very much for joining me today, Martin. And again, I think some really powerful insights there, which hopefully our community appreciate. This has been the Evolution Exchange. Fantastic to be joined by Martin, and really appreciate everything today. And we'll catch up again soon.
And thank Jake, and to the audience. It's 20 years, I made a lot of mistakes, so I tried to share some of them so you don't have to make them again, as I did, and thank you very much for your time.
Excellent.
Cheers.